With regard to the FRCs, I think the best way to describe them is to be more like a summer camp.
Senate Judiciary Committee members got their first real chance today to question officials from 5 different government agencies involved in separating families after they crossed the border, and now trying to reunify them. It's the only real substantial action Congress has taken in the nearly 3 months since the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy kicked in. And after 3.5 hours of questions, the senators didn't come up with many answers.
Okay, what percentage of the people who are let out after 20 days actually show up to their hearings?
I don't have that number in front of me, but we certainly get it. It's a small percent. It's a small percentage.
What are the number of children under 5 who have been reunified?
Sir, I don't have that number with me, I'm sorry.
We did learn that Immigration and Customs Enforcement doesn't seem to think there's a problem with facilities where families are held. That contradicts reporting on unsanitary and unsafe conditions, as well as allegations some children are being abused and migrant women are being sexually assaulted while in ICE's care.
Our family residential centers, as with all of our detention facilities, undergo a very rigorous inspection process and oversight process. Any allegations of abuse or wrongdoing that occurs in any detention facility, to include the FRCs, is automatically reported to our Joint Intake Center. With regard to the FRCs, I think the best way to describe them is to be more like a summer camp.
We also learned that the Department of Health and Human Services warned the Trump administration against pursuing the zero-tolerance policy, and they went along with it anyway.
Any member of this panel say to anyone, maybe this isn't such a good idea? Commander?
We raised a number of concerns.
You told the administration that kids would suffer.
There's no question that separation of children from parents entails significant potential for traumatic psychological injury to the child.
But the biggest takeaway? None of the officials think this was a good policy.
Let me ask this panel, who here thinks that zero tolerance has been a success? You can just raise your hand if you think it's been a success. Who thinks that the family separation policy has been a success? Raise your hand.
But nobody will take responsibility for it.
What went wrong?
Sir, it's our responsibility in CBP to make the apprehensions and turn subjects over to our partners at ICE and or HHS.
So as far as you're concerned, nothing went wrong. Mr. McHenry, what went wrong?
I'd have to defer to my colleagues' responses because they're on the front lines.
You wash your hands of this one, huh? Ms. Higgins, what went wrong?
Our role in the process is a very narrow one, so I would have to defer to my colleagues on the logistics of the policies in place today.
Regardless of who in Washington takes the blame for separating families, children caught in the middle might never get over what they've been through. Trauma doesn't end when they see their parents. And for some children, that may still be far off. Government lawyers say that Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the Office of Refugee Resettlement met last Thursday's deadline to reunite the 2,634 children who were separated from their parents at the border. This is only sort of true. As of yesterday, almost 2,000 children had been reunited, but about a quarter of all kids are still not with their parents. And that's because the government never counted them for the purposes of this deadline. Of the hundreds of children with parents deemed ineligible for reunification, a handful of cases are still under review. Others had a red flag come up in their file. This could be criminal history or evidence that creates doubt about paternity or maternity. The children of these parents remain in government-contracted shelters under the custody of ORR. Another 120 children have a parent who signed a form saying that they didn't want to be reunified. But the American Civil Liberties Union questions whether these parents knew what they were signing. Attorneys working with the ACLU have identified a handful of parents who say they definitely want to get back with their kids. But the largest group by far are the 486 children whose parents are missing entirely. The majority of these kids have a parent who's already been deported. and for a few of them, their parents are somewhere in the country but out of touch with ICE. With the limited information they have, date and location of removal, maybe a phone number of a family member, the government and the ACLU will have to track down each parent and find out if they want their children sent to them or left in the U.S. to pursue their own immigration cases. A federal judge pressed the government on the whereabouts of the rest of the kids' parents and gave government lawyers until tomorrow to provide a list of all families that weren't reunited and why. The government's lawyers continue to tout their progress in reuniting families. But by declaring hundreds of parents ineligible, all they really did was succeed in meeting the benchmarks they set for themselves.